Hello and welcome from me, Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson to the special Motor Trade Radio podcast interview to celebrate Monday's reopening of car showrooms and to customers in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, following Scotland's success in reopening last week.
Now, today we're delighted to welcome back an old friend of the podcast, Robin Luscombe, owner of Luscombe Motors, the Leeds-based Suzuki, MG and Mitsubishi business, and his son Sam, the group's innovation and development manager. By way of a quick backgrounder, the single-site multi-franchise business is based in Hunslet and was founded by Robin in 2010 following a long career at Colin Appleyard, where he started as an apprentice and worked his way up to director. Having worked with the Suzuki brand for 28 years, Robin launched his business with Suzuki, subsequently winning the brand's Dealer of the Year award 4 times and counting. The business expanded its operations firstly with Mitsubishi and more recently with MG, while Sam, a digital specialist who previously worked for JCT 600, joined the business in 2019. So welcome to the show, Robin and Sam.
Hello, thanks for having us on.
So, all right, guys, welcome.
You're welcome.
Bit of a background there, Robin, and not a lot to shoes to fill there, Sam. No, it's great to have you both on, and glad you're both doing well. And I know you both sat there together in the office today on whatever the weather is like there over in Leeds there. So again, a warm welcome and thanks for coming on today. And during what must be an incredible busy time for you both as showrooms reopened on Monday to showrooms in a physical environment. And do you want to just take us through some of the sort of preparation for the Monday reopening and how the day went itself once you opened?
I'll come on that. To be fair, we have been very busy for 11 months since really May time, as we started to bring salespeople back and we got used to this click and collect and delivery and everything else. It surprised us how busy we've been. And then obviously when we went into lockdown in January, we were used to it. And so it's almost strange going back to the old normal. We had to remember really what to do because we got so used to doing it in a different way. And to get ready for it actually wasn't that difficult. We had enough notice, so it was a matter of getting cars back in the showroom, getting all the staff back. And then really the most important job was making sure that we'd got a load of appointments this week. That we'd been in touch with people that had inquired that had wanted to buy a car but wanted to wait until they could test drive, people whose PCPs, finance agreements were coming up that we thought were in the market or that they'd have to be in the market, and getting appointments organised. So that's been the challenge. And then yesterday, it was just like winding the clock back. Off we go. People turning up, appointments, people just walking on. You actually forget that a customer can, without any pre-contact, can just turn up and come to look at a car. So it was good.
And what about yourself, Sam? Did you have to, in terms of in the area that you operate within, in terms of that innovation and that digital, was the obviously for you throughout this click and collect, you were working obviously very much in that digital environment. What was it like for preparing for Monday? Because it was about customer engagement, I suspect, that you were reopening again and that you were welcoming customers in physically now.
Absolutely. So just the biggest thing I think was getting the staff back in. We've had most of our sales staff back in the entire quarter, to be fair. Most of them were back by early February, just due to the demand that we'd seen with click and collect and home delivery. But getting everybody back into that, people have dealt for 3, 4, 5 months on email and telephone. So getting everybody back ready to speak to people face to face, presentation wise, obviously. But that doesn't diminish from the responsibility we've still got of preparing the stock properly online, dealing with email leads, Email leads have always been, typically when the doors have been opened, somebody would much rather deal with a telephone call or a walk-in than an email lead. And I think that's sort of changed over the past 12 months. Email leads have become far more important as the sort of intent increased. So I think while it's been different, it's been strange, sort of seeing people back just out of familiarity. It's not something we've done for a little while. The fundamentals don't really change.
We've still, I'll just jump in, we've still been seeing lots of service customers. So there's been a lot of traffic through what we used to call a showroom, which for a few months we've called a service reception, which we can now call a showroom again. But there's been a strong throughput of people because the service department's been very busy. People have been quite happy to come out and have the cars serviced. So it's just now a bit easier because people can actually come in and talk to somebody, whereas they had to come in and talk to the service receptionist, and we could see them and we could sort of wave and say hello from a distance, but we couldn't get into conversation with them about anything. We just had to let them come and go.
Yeah, I remember the videos of yourself when you in that initial lockdown and then reopening, videos of sort of trying to explain to your service customers what they need to do when they turn up and the directions through the showroom to the service reception, and it's been an interesting time for sure.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's still while we sort of feel like we're coming towards the end of this COVID, it's still around. We've still got to be mega careful. We've still got to make sure that everything we were doing properly throughout the last 12 months, we continue to do. Masks, sanitisation. We're still obviously being very cautious about what we do with handovers, and obviously still unaccompanied test drives. So it's still being very conscious and very aware that while it's back to some sort of normality, we're still not quite there yet.
We had to do we didn't have to do, but we did do a video just like we did way back, but now it was just to reassure people that the showroom's open, but we're still taking COVID safe measures, and how it sort of works now, because just to get over that confusion as to, can I go to the showroom, can I come in, what happens, are you going to be clean, are the cars going to be clean? So we did a quick 2-minute video just that we can send to people that are coming or put around here and there and what have you, so that they can be reassured.
Now, from what you've both said, you've obviously been talking to your customers throughout this latest lockdown and indeed previous ones. And as you said, Robin, you've been seeing customers come in for after sales work. I guess what I'm interested in is what sort of feedback you're getting on the sort of level of pent-up demand. Were you seeing that in the run-up to Monday and in the conversations you were having on the day itself? So what sort of level of pent-up demand are you seeing at the moment for new and used cars?
Well, yesterday we sold half of what we sell in a good week in a day. So that was a good start.
Yeah.
But it's very brand specific. And it's very strange. It surprised us how brand and car specific it is, because MG electric cars have been selling well through lockdown with nobody test driving them. People just happy to buy them based on the fact that it was an electric car. They've done all the research. They want an electric car. That's an affordable electric car. Ticks the box. I want one. I'll have one. Which you would never expect with an electric car. You'd think people would want to test drive it. But they've been unaffected, or seemingly unaffected, by not being able to test drive. Whereas the Suzuki owner, which is generally a retail person that wants a good value, reliable car, the existing Suzuki owners have generally said, I'll just wait. There's nothing wrong with my car. It's a reliable car. It doesn't go wrong. I want a new one, but I'm not in a rush because there's nothing wrong with this one. I'll just wait until everything opens again. And yesterday, predominantly what we sold were Suzukis. We sold as many new Suzukis yesterday as we sold in the whole of January. So it's strange. Mitsubishi is a different animal altogether because of everything that's happening with Mitsubishi. And their pickups, if somebody wants to pick up, they want to pick up. They don't need to drive it. They just want to pick up. Some of the other Mitsubishi product is selling on the fact that there's some good deals, because obviously Mitsubishi UK pulling out, they've got to get rid of the stock. It's not a fire sale by any stretch of the imagination, and the rate we're going, it ain't going to be one. But there are some better deals, and the cars are now selling, and people are buying them, and have been buying them all the way through lockdown.
And Robin, just going back to, say those MG customers who are buying EVs, is that a different trend to what you would have seen 12 months ago? Would they have wanted that test drive before committing themselves?
I'll just jump in on this one. I think it's what we've seen with the EV customer is they're far more informed. They're far more willing to do independent research on their own terms. Speak to other EV buyers. There's lots of information out there in groups on sort of third-party websites that have sprung up around the additional information that's required for an electric car. And often you find them coming to you with they're very, very well informed. And actually, it's a conversation then around just making sure confirmation of what they think they've read. And actually, for someone who's buying an EV, especially at this end of the market, it's less about the experiential side of it and more about the cost saving and the practicalities, which is, and even with the MG brand itself, we've seen a vast difference in the demographic between petrol and electrics. So electric buyers, as I mentioned, have been very willing to sort of buy over the phone, over email, because they're comfortable and they're confident in what they've read and what they've done. The petrol MG buyer is, we haven't really done that many because it's a very experiential product. You get in it, you sit in it, you look at it, you think, actually, this is impressive for the price point it's at. Bums on seats sell cars, sort of thing. So I think in that there's a demographic split. And also yesterday, what you saw was, which I'm not sure how long it'll last, is people just wanted to get out of the house and come out.
Yeah, because as from yesterday in England and Wales, they were able to get haircuts, go to a pub for a beer, and buy a car.
You should have had a hairdresser and a nail bar on site. You'd have been all right then.
Another follow-up question for you guys on that. I mean, you were saying a lot of interest in Suzuki on reopening day. Was that across new and used?
Yeah, a bigger difference in new, because new had been quiet for Suzuki, as you can see by the registration figures.
Yeah,
used Suzukis have been selling well. I mean, we can't get enough of them, and we've got a big problem now because we haven't been selling enough new. We're starting to sell some new. Obviously, yesterday we did well, generating some part exchanges too. Again, used cars is going to be a big problem. It's a big problem for me to find enough used cars with a margin left in them to refill the forecourts. But it was made, the biggest thing that we noticed yesterday was new cars, although it was a good day for used cars as well.
And just before we move on to talking about, obviously, the Q2 and beyond, and the opportunities and challenges for both there. Just obviously, Sam, I saw you the other day on a webinar, and you were talking just before about the MG electric and obviously the knowledge and stuff. But from a business perspective, what learnings have you found? Because there's a lot of conversations at the minute around EV and the growth of EV, but we talk about the consumer in terms of their learnings and knowledge. But we've got to remember there's a knowledge within the dealers themselves, isn't there? Your salespeople, your front end staff, your service customers, and things like that. What are you doing within Luscombe's with that at the minute, with trying to make sure that customers are informed around EV?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is because the customers are so well informed, it doesn't half make you sharpen your pencil and think, God, we've got to be on this, because there's nothing more embarrassing than a customer knowing more than you do. Everybody's got to sort of relearn. It's completely different. There's all the technology that, our technicians are now into retrain away from engines and more into battery software updates and that kind of thing, which is completely new. It's completely different, but it's equally important, because the man who's got an electric car that isn't getting the range that he wants, or is having problems with anything to do with that, there's no point. You can't sort of fob somebody off. You can't. It's all new information that everybody's got to be well on top of. And one thing that we found customers reporting back to us is that the sort of the diversification of knowledge across dealers is massive. You've got some dealers who sort of see electric as a bolt-on part of their franchise and sort of, we'll do a few, but we like to stick with petrol, that's what we know. And the ones who've really embraced it are the ones who've have done so well with it, because the customers appreciate the fact that they can talk to somebody on the same level.
It reminds me a little bit of going back to when I used to work in a motorbike shop. Car buyers generally want to know the main things and a bit of reassurance about odd little bits and pieces, but the car salesman and anybody in the car business doesn't have to be a car geek, doesn't have to know the car inside out and back to front and every minuscule detail. Whereas when you're selling a motorbike, the guy who's going to buy the motorbike has done his research and knows everything about the new model that's come out. It's got this, it's got that, and it's a slight little tweak here, and it's a slight little tweak there, and it'll go around the corner a little bit quicker than the last one, and they know everything, because the motorcycle enthusiasts, whereas car owners are car drivers. But with the EV, they are definitely, the EV buyer is an EV enthusiast. He's determined to get everything out of the EV. They want to time the charging so that they get the charge for nothing. They want to park it outside and use the battery on the car when it's charged to resend electric into the house, so they're getting free electric, and then charge it in the middle of the night when electric could be free or next to free. And they go into it in minute detail to save an odd couple of quid here and there, and to be at the forefront of technology. And they're completely different. And it's not only young people that are buying EVs. You would expect it to be the millennials and all that, but it's not. It's a wide cross-section of people.
Yeah, like you say, it's a very diverse customer base. They're still new to the market. MG for yourselves it's a good entrance point into that EV sector and that EV market for many customers. But again, like you say, there's so much research goes into it, because they have to look at the charging infrastructure, their driver behaviours and things like this, and whether it works for them, doesn't it? So there is a lot of work to go into that. So it's I think you're right. I think it's everybody's job to make sure that the customers are well informed and the industry is well informed around the EV market.
We were involved with sort of EVs or PHEVs from 2014 with the Mitsubishi Outlander, and people bought that because it was a tax-saving car, predominantly. Yeah. The vast majority of people were buying it because it saved money either in tax, or they just did a lot of commuting and could do it without putting petrol in. The EV, the full EV, now has got past early adopters, it's got past tax savers. It's now people that want the technology, and it's people that want the electric car. They want an electric car.
Yeah.
And the beauty of where we are with MG is that it's obviously electric cars are more expensive than the petrol alternatives, but the gap isn't that big, especially with the MG product at the moment. It's found that pocket of the market where it can just be that little step up from an equivalent petrol car. So it's not the massive hike that it used to be.
Yeah, no. Go on, Curtis.
No, I was going to say, just going back to that question around demand, and you do represent 3 brands, and I'm conscious that this is only day 2 since showrooms reopened, but how do you think demand for new and used cars will look across your brands over, say, Q2 and maybe beyond?
I think Suzuki will have a massive spike. I think Mitsubishi's on the plateau that at the moment it's as good as it's going to get, and it's going to get worse as stock runs out. Obviously, come the 1st of October, it finishes completely.
Yeah.
MG's obviously on an upward trajectory. They've got supply problems with petrol cars. well, they've got supply problems because they're actually selling, they're growing too fast. They're growing pains. So that's going to cause them some issues. But it's going to be one hell of a brand. They've got affordable cars in an area where there isn't a lot of competition at that lower end of the market. The EVs, it's the flavour of the month, and if you can have an EV for similar price to a petrol car with all the savings and the idea that you've got something new and fresh, that's happening. So MG's got a long way to go, and it's going pretty quick. It's going to be good.
And what about used cars? I mean, you mentioned before about used, for Suzuki, it's getting hold of cars, and we've spoken briefly about this before. But where do you see that now for the next quarter? Because we've had a starvation of products coming in from the new car market of registrations over the last sort of 12 months of the pandemic. Some manufacturers better than others. Some supply constraints coming into new, but where do you see that happening now from a used car perspective? You've got three brands there. So like you say, you've got the situation with Mitsubishi, you've got a new entrance with MG, and you've got a very strong brand with Suzuki, but it's that building that used vehicle park in terms of that used market for you.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of other makes as well, but the problem with used cars at the moment is that there's a shortage, so the price goes up. So the wholesale price has gone up considerably, but the retail price hasn't gone up because you've still got plenty of dealer stocks that were bought at previous prices or for whatever reason. So the retail price increase, if there is going to be one, is always a lag behind the wholesale price increases. I'm hoping that as we reopen now, there's going to be an increased number of part exchanges, which is going to ease the pressure on us to go out and buy more cars, which will then hopefully stabilise wholesale prices. And we've got to find it's the wholesale prices fluctuate a lot quicker than retail prices. So I would like to think that wholesale prices will start to ease off next week after, as more dealers have got more part exchanges. And it will just find a happy balance. If not, then retail prices will have to go up. We get that same age-old problem. There's either too much stock, not enough stock, prices are going up, prices are coming down, and we just have to manage it. We're used to it. It happens every year for one reason or another, that they're going one way or the other. We've probably been spoilt for the last 12 months because they've been so stable.
And what's your thoughts on, because obviously that's a direct impact on profitability, either from a new car perspective in terms of supply targets and achievement of targets, etc., but also from, like you say, that used market, that balance between wholesale and retail. It's that, the margin retention in between, because essentially for the last 12 months of the pandemic, there's been reports of actually, the dealer network not doing too bad in terms of margin retention for new and used.
That's driven by the manufacturer targets. Because we haven't had manufacturer targets and self-registration, pre-registration, demo, pressure, everything else, we've been able to retain some margin in both new and used cars. Once the manufacturer target machine starts to roll again, incentives, everything else, pressure, that then has a knock-on effect on everything, and dealer profitability will be affected if the manufacturers over-egg the market too much.
Sam, this is probably one for you. It's now 12 months on since the first lockdown, and as a business, I seem to recall you were an early adopter of click and collect services. How have the various lockdowns changed the business, and do you envisage growing your online proposition for both new and used?
Yeah, so we've always tried to offer the best in-person physical customer experience, whether that's through face-to-face communication, how we deal with people on the phone, email, whatever. But what we made a concerted effort to do, even before the pandemic, actually, that just helped speed it up, was to make sure that was replicated online. I'm very, very much of the opinion that if we can produce and provide the best possible customer experience online, then that's a route to far more sales of both new and used cars. Obviously, as everyone's aware, there's new entrants to the market offering used cars with a new sort of USP, if you like. It's something that all dealers can offer, I think, and it's something that we will offer. And to be honest, I think we're better placed to do it better than the new entrants. So it's just that getting that digital side of it right. We can do the bits that they can't. We can now start to do the bits that they do well. And if we can get that better and better, and to be honest, we're probably at a position now where we're going to start doubling down on that digital investment. It's proved its value over the last 12 months. The difficulty now is going to be to keep that momentum and to keep that single focus on it. But if you imagine, yes, it was brilliant yesterday. We had a load of people on the site. We had a load of physical interactions. But our website is still seeing 10 times the amount of people every day that our physical forecourt will ever see. So there's certainly a big opportunity there. I think people are now more willing to travel or more willing to buy cars unseen. And by unseen, I sort of mean you've got to try and do as much as you can to reduce that distance, to increase the visibility, to increase the transparency of your new and used car stock. So that's what we try to focus on.
And of that online business that you've been doing, certainly since that first lockdown 12 months ago, what sort of proportion have been doing the whole of the transaction, from beginning to end online? And how do you see that panning out in the future?
To be honest, fully online is still very small. I still think it demonstrates there's a massive desire for some sort of human interaction at some point in that journey. Since we launched our online solution sort of 12 months ago, we've probably sold 10 cars fully end to end without any sort of contact with us prior to hitting that reservation button, which is a very small percentage of the cars that we've had reservations on and that we've obviously sold in that period. Will that increase? I'm not so sure. It's not going to be a quick increase. I think there will be a very small percentage of that end of the spectrum that will want to do that. As long as we're providing the option that they can do that and putting all the tools in place so that they feel comfortable to reserve a car without speaking to us, then absolutely. And by the same token, you'll have the other end of the spectrum who will just want to come down and see it, touch it, and won't even bother with the online element. But that large majority in the middle, I see sort of, we've seen it over the past 12 months that people that you wouldn't expect, or people who initially inquire and say, I want to drive it, I want to see it. Well, actually, when you do the job well and you alleviate all the fears, all the barriers that they had, they actually don't need to test drive it. They don't need to come down. You can do everything from home. So I think it's going to be a big part, but it's still going to be the small minority, I think.
It's quite a small percentage of the numbers of cars that are reserved online. The ones that actually complete the transaction entirely online without speaking to us is quite small. We get lots of cars reserved online, but there's very few that go all the way through without any contact whatsoever.
And that reservation is very, very important for us because it gives you that 24/7 availability. It also gives somebody who's looking at a used car a bit of a nudge. It gives them that sort of scarcity and the exclusivity that if I don't reserve it, then somebody else can.
And just out of interest, Sam, of those customers who are transacting online and they get to a certain point and they want to talk to you, how are they doing it? Is it by email or phone?
About 20 different ways.
Any which way. And that's one of the things that's what we've tried to do, to meet them where they want to be. Don't try and funnel them into a certain communication method. We've had, a lot of people would want to ring you up. So obviously we've had phones diverting when we've not been in the showrooms. We've had live chat that comes through directly to us rather than going to a call center full of agency staff who just basically glorified data capture. They actually come through to someone who can answer the questions. Email. We try to provide as many, and actually Zoom and WhatsApp have become, you're not sort of forcing that in anymore. That can be more natural because everyone's been using it for the past 12 months with their families. So yeah, any which way, wherever we can be, the better.
Yeah, and it just shows, it reinforces the importance of that interaction, doesn't it?
Definitely. Because at the end of the day, while the mechanisms might have changed, it's still people buying from people. And that's why we want to try and keep that at the heart of it.
What's interesting is if somebody contacts you, let's just say via Facebook Messenger, they want to continue the conversation on Facebook Messenger. They don't want to be moved across into email, or if they're on WhatsApp, they want to do it all by WhatsApp. We've sold cars by WhatsApp. We've sold cars by Facebook Messenger, and historically, the old-fashioned thing was as soon as you get an email, get them to give you a ring. That's obviously old hat. I mean, that's just so old now, it's unbelievable. But even when you've got somebody on a different form of communication, it's much easier for us if we can channel them towards email. But they don't want channeling to it. If they're on Messenger, they're on Messenger.
There's a reason why they've come through that channel to start with.
Yeah, and that's
it's the comfort factor, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's what they feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I mean, we remember it probably, Robin, more than the others, but thinking about that whole thing, moving the world of omnichannel e-commerce and the expectation that everything was going to go online with no interaction, whereas, as you say, reality is and I hate to use the word, but fluid. It is, the customers want to jump in and out and do different things, don't they? And, they get to a certain point online and they want some help and support. So they go to the next stage, or they do a little bit online and they want to do the rest in person. And like you say, with what you've just been running through there, it is giving all those different options for them to communicate in whatever form they want to communicate in, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, and it also has a big effect with the sales staff and the dealer staff, because historically, a salesman was trained to be in control of the situation. Yeah, to go through the steps to a sale, this, that, and the other, and what I did, all those old-fashioned things. Well, unfortunately, now they've gone completely out the window because the customer is in total control. Because if he doesn't respond to, if he asks a message on Facebook, WhatsApp, email, however else he asks it, if you don't answer it how he wants it to be answered, or with the answer that he's hoping for, he's just gone. You can't get hold of him. You can't ring him. You can't, you can email him, or if you've got his phone number, he just turns it off. If you don't want to reply to an email, just like the rest of us get hundreds of junk emails every day, and we just delete. If it's LinkedIn, we all get loads of messages on LinkedIn, and loads of them we don't reply to because it's somebody trying to sell us something. Well, the consumer does exactly the same. So it's really difficult now. You've got to give the consumer exactly what they want. You've got to try and engage with them, because if not, they'll just ignore you.
Yeah, like you say, they're in full control of the mouse or keyboard or whatever way the phone or whatever way they're interacting, aren't they? And like you say, and if you don't interact with them the right way, they'll just move on to somebody else who will interact with them in the right way.
You can't run out onto forecourt and drag them back, and you can't get your sales manager to come and second face them because, they're distant. They're on whatever form of communication they want to be on. So you've got to be really on your game.
And we've just come out of March, and you're frightening to think that we've just been through a second March ending of the lockdown, and showrooms have reopened, and we know the market was up 11.5% on last year, 283,000 registrations versus 254, and lots of conversations of where those vehicles are registered. But at the end of the day, there's still registrations, there's still new cars, they'll still be entering the used car market at some point in the future. But How did you perform in relative to that market? Were you kind of on track? Were you kind of pleased with your Q1 or March performance? I know you said that January was fairly tough in terms of the year for one or two of your brands, but how did March perform for you guys?
March was good. It's a bit difficult really because there's 2 million new cars, or a bit less than 2 million. There's 6 or 8, 7 million used cars. If I sell 2,500, I'm happy. So 2,500 out of 8 million, I don't really care whether it's 8 million, 9 million, 7 million. There's still plenty to go at. There's enough for me to sort me out. But our financial year starts on the 1st of June, so all the real bad news of the end of March, April and May went into last year, and it was all right. This year, since June, all the way through, has just been remarkable. It'll be my best financial year ever. The first quarter was all right, made up by used cars, some new cars, service is all right. I'm not paying rates. We've worked smarter. Fortunately, we've got Suzuki that suffered a bit with new cars, but used cars has been very strong. MG's come in just at the right time for us. Mitsubishi is doing all right now. It's going to disappear, but it's doing all right. So if 21-22 was as good as 2021 for me, I'd be highly delighted.
And Robin, just picking up on Mitsubishi, you've represented the brand for some years now. How will its withdrawal from importing new cars into the UK from October actually impact your business?
Well, I'll obviously miss all the new car revenue and some of the part exchanges that the new cars generate. Over a period of time, I would think in 5 years' time, its contribution will be negligible, but it's going to be all right. For a while, used cars is all right. After sales is going to be all right. We're going to have less costs associated with it. I've been fortunate, very fortunate, or lucky, or whatever, that we took MG on for Leeds, which was going in a shared showroom that I actually had to extend to make it big enough to fit the two in. So as soon as Mitsubishi announced that they were pulling out, I shelved any plans to extend my showroom. That saved me a few quid.
Being a Yorkshire lad, that's not a bad thing, is it, Robin?
No, it was all right. It's a silver lining. You've got to find the positives. So I have to then let the dust settle and decide whether there's room to put something else in or there isn't.
This is what I was going to ask you, because I assume that you'll retain the after sales business, and that will provide a decent revenue stream for you. But would you look at refranchising at some stage in the future?
It very much depends on what it is, and it very much depends on what my laddo here wants to do. I'm 60 in the summer, so I'm looking to have a little easier life, and he's taking on more and more and more. So that a lot depends on his drive, and really if there's something that's available that fits. So that we're open to all sorts of ideas and thoughts. We keep thinking about different things, but I think that there's going to be some opportunities come along within a couple of years with electric cars, and we're in Leeds, so there's going to be an electric car zone or clean air zone for Leeds at some point, I'm sure. There's lots of new manufacturers coming with electric cars, so that might be something that excites us.
No pressure then, Sam.
The thing is, there's no urgency, because if you're in a mess and you've got to do something, you do whatever you can that's available at the time. Whereas we can just sit back, everything's going all right. We can run the business very successfully with just losing Mitsubishi and MG and Suzuki carrying on, and then just pick the opportunity if it comes up.
The initial focus has got to be to replace that lost volume with additional used cars, I think. I think we've got the setup here to do it now. I think we've got the staff in place, we've got the space, we've got the web presence, I think. So that's got to be the primary focus once Mitsubishi goes, is to fill that void with additional used cars.
And Sam, just finally, I mean, just thinking slightly differently, because it's your dad's giving you the business now for the future. We've just heard that he's obviously going to put his feet up and hand the reins over at some point. So just thinking around, in terms of your world of digital and innovation, and you've had 12 months of the best learning of what works, what doesn't work, new technology, etc. What, in terms of short to medium term and for your business, what are your learnings? What do you think you're going to keep? What do you think you're going to sort of step away from because it kind of was there for a single purpose only, or what have you got planned for in terms of that world of innovation and digital for the consumer now, short to medium term?
Yeah, none of it goes away. Admittedly, for the next month or so, while we sort of take advantage of this physical pent-up demand, it might go on the back burner. But long term, it's definitely where we see future growth, both in ways to innovate and do more to help sort of add transparency and trust for buyers. But it's not just that; it's also learning from other industries. I think we view car buyers as people who were in market however long ago, 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, whatever, and how different it's going to be then. But we've also got to remember that these same car buyers are the people who've sat at home and bought from Amazon, bought from Currys. They've done. The world's modernised, not just in car retail, in everything they do. So we've got to try and make sure that we're on top of that and offering exactly what their expectations are, not just in car retail, but in purchasing in general. And obviously there's far more, there's quicker innovations and more things we can learn in the e-commerce space, because it's not something, it's quite new for this industry. There's other industries that have been doing it and fine-tuning it for a long time. So there's certainly things that we can pick up. But ultimately, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, it's very important that whatever we do retains the people side of it. Yeah. Just by talking about innovation and digital doesn't mean that you suddenly you don't have a sales team here and you don't have of people physical interactions with people. It's just very, very important that the people complement what we do online.
Philip, the most important thing, Philip and Curtis, the most important thing is that the staff, the sales staff particularly, don't revert back to what they did a year ago.
Yeah.
That's paramount, because it'd be very easy to, we're back to normal, we'll just go back to how we were. I had a salesman yesterday who's worked virtually all the way through furlough, lockdowns, this, that, and the other, and what have you. And he actually said to me yesterday, he said, I prefer dealing with people like we were dealing with them yesterday. He says it's more efficient. It's quicker. It's easier. I can sell more cars in a day without the showroom being open than I can when people come in, because inevitably when you sat talking to somebody, it takes longer.
Yeah, there's less focus on the actual process or the deal itself, and there's a little bit more chit chat, whereas like you say, online they ask a question they want to answer. Now whether that's through the system or over the phone or via email or whatever sort of channel they communicate on, they're asking something and they get an answer, don't they? And it's like you say, it's a very efficient process. But as you said before, Sam, they do some of that online, and then when they come into the showroom they want that human interaction just to dot the I's, cross the T's and finalise it, don't they? But they've done everything in the digital world.
Exactly. And I think it's important that digital world is a representation of what you like in store. We don't have We don't have a marketing team that put all the cars on the net. We don't have sort of separate teams. Every item of content on our website is produced by our sales teams. So they are selling the car. They're just selling it in a different way to how they would do before. It's still all the same sales craft. It's just in a different way.
Yeah. No, I mean, we could talk for hours about it. I mean, you know, it's fantastic, and it's been an absolute pleasure having both of you on, and I'm sure that the listeners today will find it extremely interesting of what you've been through, what you've done, the learnings from it, and obviously the view that you've got, and particularly having, you know, the 3 brands that you've got from a new entrance to a certain extent with MG, particularly with that electric vehicle offering, your Suzuki, and obviously the outgoing Mitsubishi as well, gives a very broad spectrum of the market. So I just want to thank you both for coming on, and thanks for the time today and sharing your knowledge and showing your experience of what you've been through and your first sort of 24, 48 hours of opening up.
No problem. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. Many thanks, Robin and Sam, for joining us today. And we really do appreciate the time you've taken to talk to us through, just taking us through the reopening process and your current and future plans. And we both wish you every success in the coming weeks and months as you work through this new normal, especially now that you can see customers face to face once again. So that's all for now. You've been listening to a special Motor Trade Radio podcast interview. Please like and share on social media if you found it useful. We'll be recording more weekday interview podcasts over the coming weeks and months, so do keep an eye on your podcast feed for them. Meanwhile, we'll be back with industry headlines on Saturday. Until then, it's goodbye from Philip and I.